Guys, I'm really delighted to welcome back to the podcast our friend Rebecca Walser. She's a wealth strategist, a tax attorney, best-selling author. She has her own podcast called Crashes and Taxes. I think you know she's also a sponsor of this podcast. And so her website, friendofdinesh.com, friendofdinesh.com. Rebecca, welcome to the podcast. Thanks for joining me. Let's start by talking about just economic policy, because I watched the Biden administration do things and I asked myself, is there an economic philosophy behind it? It's hard for me to see one. What do you think is driving their approach to economic issues, whether it's inflation or energy? Is it kind of ad hoc? We'll do this over here, we'll do that over there. Or do they have an underlying way of pulling it all together?
Yeah, I think that the message that the administration puts out there, Dinesh, is one of Bidenomics, and that it's great, and they've increased manufacturing, and they've had, the lowest unemployment rate in 50 years. They've had all these millions of jobs created, and they spin all of this. And the thing is, if you're in economics, you're someone that understands that you can pick and choose their statistics, and you know that better than anyone, Dinesh. We know you can make things and read the headline number that you want. But, this past week, while Biden was out there touting his Bidenomics and talking specifically about manufacturing and South Carolina, to be specific, he was highlighting, we just lost 42,000 manufacturing jobs in last month's payroll numbers. And when you look at it, we've had 8 consecutive months of manufacturing coming down. We have a 5.3% depression for manufacturing year over year. This is a global phenomenon that's happening worldwide, which is very indicative of recessionary cycles. And interestingly enough, we usually see this happening in manufacturing when we're about 1 to 2 years into a recession. So the fact that we're not technically even called that we're in a recession right now, Dinesh, is really fake. Economically speaking, they've really juxtaposed the numbers and really, machinations of these numbers to make things look like they can go out and tout them when the real American is sitting at the kitchen table trying to figure out how they're going to pay their bills.
Do you think, Rebecca, traditionally, economics 101, a recession is the opposite of inflation. The two are kind of on opposite ends of the fence, so to speak. And yet we seem to have inflationary trends in the economy at the same time that you have this economic slowdown. So are we seeing a return to the so-called stagflation of the 70s, or is there kind of a different way to look at it?
If we were to continue in this current vortex, I think you're hitting the nail on the head. That's exactly what's happening, is we're going into bad economic times. But what's the driver still of the over 9 million job openings that we continue to still have are the small and medium-sized businesses. If you look at the ADP report that came out last week, we had created 497 private jobs. Of those, 199,000 were from businesses that are 50 employees or smaller. So it's really the medium and small businesses that is still giving Jerome Powell such a headache on the inflation numbers. Because what happens, Dinesh, is when people are not working, and we have about 100 million Americans that are of working age that aren't working. Now, that is a lot of reasons. People are retired, people are in school, whatever. There's lots of reasons. However, that is an astronomically large, it's a third of our population just about that could be working that actually isn't working. And so as you have 9 million, 10 million jobs, we've had jobs come down some, but as you have so many people that aren't working, that aren't accepting jobs, payroll has to go up to bring these people, to get them interested enough to come back to work. Part of the problem with Bidenomics is we have too many programs, government programs still, that don't have any kinds of means testing or work requirements that are keeping people out of the workforce. But you've had, even though wage growth has slowed, it has still continued to go up because we have to attract these employees. So you have this really weird dichotomy that you wouldn't normally see, where it's still so hard to get people to work. So we're having wages go up, although slowing down the wage increases, yet have 9 million openings, yet we're really going into recession. So where we see it is Fortune 100, Fortune 500, medium-sized businesses, hiring freezes, Dinesh. I have a lot of colleagues that can't get jobs at big, investment banks in New York City and Boston, and that's unusual. Hiring freezes. And then, of course, we've had a lot of layoffs in the last, 18 months from big corporations. So it's a very unusual place, but you're right. The stagflation occurs when you have inflationary pressure for too much money supply, yet your economy is starting to fail. So that's when you get that weird stagflation type of interesting situation.
I mean, Rebecca, you're making to me a critical point, which is you're saying that because the Biden people could go, well, yeah, we've got these problems with jobs and so on. Well, that's really why we want to spend all this money through the government, because we want to help revive the economy and create new jobs and so on. But you're saying that when you offer people all these benefits and they begin to put them all together, I can get some money over here and some money over there and some money over here. Well, why the heck do I need to show up for work? That this so-called remedy is making the problem far, far worse. And I think that's a key point. Let's take a pause. When we come back, I want to pivot to what we as sort of savers and investors and people trying to improve our lot, how we can respond to this peculiar situation.